Previously on the Aruba switching story, we've learned about the Edge Services platform and how Aruba switches fit into the unified infrastructure portion of ESP. We provisioned a data center to go along with our workflow where we need to plug in a security camera to the campus edge so that it can reach the data center and the facial recognition application that will be installed. We've seen Aruba Fabric Composer be able to provision the data center. We've learned about data center bridging and how that can help with Aruba data center switches. We've learned about infrastructure deployment using DHCP or the CX mobile app. Next, Matt and Ruben are going to continue with us during this episode to tell us more about provisioning switches with Aruba Central and some of the new capabilities for AOS CX within Aruba Central.
Thank you, Justin. So Aruba Central is Aruba's cloud and on-premise management platform for the entire Aruba solution. That's wireless, wired, software, and security. So what we're going to use Central for here is to provision a 6200 switch in our branch office.
So how do we get the switch into Central?
So there are a few ways to add devices, including switches, to a Central inventory. So let's go ahead, go to the account homepage and look at the inventory, see what we have here. So for switches that are purchased with Central licenses, they can automatically be added to a customer's Aruba Activate and Central account as part of the fulfillment process. And I'll talk about what role Activate plays in provisioning here in a little bit. Devices can also be added in bulk if you have switches that were not purchased with a Central license that are going to be used, managed by Central after they're already deployed. You can use what's called a comma separated value or CSV file to perform a bulk import of existing devices using serial numbers and MAC address pairs. And then lastly, for small testing or training environments, you can add devices individually by serial number and MAC address. In this particular case, the switch that we're going to be onboarding has already been added to our inventory here. We can see that there's our 6200 with that serial number. And once we have the switch in the inventory, the next step is to assign this switch a management license. So we'll go back to the account homepage and go to license assignment. So the current release of Central licenses switches by switch family. So if we go to switches here, we can see each switch family here has a particular type of license. So we have the Aruba CX switch and an AOS switch equivalent. So we have the 6100 and the 2500 series, the 6200 and the 2900s, 6300 and 3800. And then lastly, we have the chassis and data center switches, 6400, 5400, 8300, 8400. So those are the switch families. So what we're going to do is find our 6200. So here it is right at the top of the list. It is not currently assigned a license. We'll go ahead and manage its license assignment, choose the foundation license. In the current release of Central, the foundation license provides access to all switch management functionality. So that's what we're going to use. Update that. Now we see there's a switch assigned the foundation license for 6200, 2900. So we are actually ready to launch network operations and start setting up the configuration we're going to apply to the 6200. So devices being managed by Central are assigned to configuration groups, each of which contains a config that is common across multiple devices in a given role, location, or device type. However you want to organize your groups, we allow you that flexibility. So there are two types of groups that you can use to manage your Central devices. The first is a GUI-based group. That's graphical user interface. These provide a user-friendly interface to manage your device settings. The other type of group is the template group. This allows administrators to define configuration templates that use variables and conditional checks, if then, to permit deployment of more complex configurations to multiple devices at once.
Which type are we going to use for this 6200 in particular?
So for the branch office, this 6200 is going to be assigned to, we're going to use a GUI-based config group. So create the new group here, Go ahead and give it the branch office name. Now, these checkboxes here allow you to enable template mode for those particular device types, either APs and gateways or switches. But because this is going to be just a plain GUI-based config group, we're going to go ahead and leave those unchecked. We're going to set a group password, and we're going to add the group. So we have our branch office group here. We're going to open its configuration by selecting this little gear icon here. And we're going to move over to the devices section, select switches. And we'll open the AOS CX group configuration. So we're going to start with some basic settings here. I'm going to go ahead and populate the contact information and location. I'm going to provide the DNS server information so the switch can continue to resolve the DNS host name for the central server once it's online. Done with that. We're going to create some VLANs that are going to be used by users and devices on the switch. So we'll start with our basic client data VLAN. We have a voice VLAN. And a VLAN that will be used for cameras, including the ones we're going to use for our facial recognition platform. Now, what I've created last is a VLAN that is going to be assigned as the access VLAN, all of our ports. We're not going to use VLAN 1 for this setup. Go back, go to our port and link aggregation configuration. I'm going to select all of our ports except our management port, edit their settings in bulk, and we're going to change that access VLAN ID. So now we got some basic configuration done on the switch. Let's go ahead and assign the 6200 to the group. Now, because the 6200 has not actually been connected to the network yet, it's still in a factory default state, not yet booted. We're going to do that from the account homepage. The device inventory, our switches, there's our 6200. You see it assigned the license, and we're going to assign it to the branch office group. Now, what this does, by doing the group assignment before the switch has actually been plugged in for the first time, what will actually happen is as soon as this switch boots up, connects to the network, and gets assigned to the central instance and establishes that connection, it will immediately get pushed the configuration from the group that we assigned it to, rather than being assigned to a default configuration group. So now the switch is assigned, let's go ahead and boot it up. So when a factory default switch is powered up and connected to the network, the first thing it's going to do is automatically attempt to connect to the Activate web service for provisioning. So if that connection fails, the switch will automatically retry it after a predefined interval that doubles after each failed attempt. So that starts at 1 second, and after each failed attempt, it goes from 1 second to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and it will keep doing that until it fails the 10th attempt, and that timeout will max out at 5 minutes. And it will continue those retries until the switch is either successfully provisioned on a central instance using Activate, or the configuration is changed from another source, such as a console connection or NetEdit. Now, once the switch successfully connects to Activate, it will receive a provisioning response. Now, if that switch is to be managed by Central, that provisioning response will include a URL for the central instance that switch has been assigned to, that the account with that switch in the inventory exists on. The switch will then establish a connection to the received central URL using TLS certificate authentication to secure that connection. Once that connection is established and secured, Central will push the group configuration to the switch. And we can see the status of that central connection from the switch console. So here we can see the switch has connected to Activate, and is in the process of receiving its provisioning response. We wait a few seconds. And now we see we have our central location. So this is the URL that was provided in the provisioning response. We can see that we're using the management port for the connection, and the central connection status is connected. We have some more information about the provisioning source, which was Activate, which is currently connected. See when we were last connected, and the Activate server URL that was used. So pretty straightforward. No operator intervention is required at all here. This happens immediately when the switch is booted up. And if we take a look at the configuration, we can see the VLANs that were created that were part of the central group configuration and that have been assigned to all of our switch interfaces. So now that the switch is fully online, we can go ahead and make some additional changes to the configuration using the central UI itself. So let's go ahead and return to network operations. So one of the things that the latest release of Central gives us the ability to use is what we call multi-edit mode. So you see this little toggle switch at the top of the configuration page. Let's go ahead and flip that switch. So what is multi-edit? So I showed you the NetEdit configuration manager earlier. What multi-edit is this is a portion of the NetEdit configuration management functionality that has been integrated directly into the Aruba Central UI itself. So this is based on the NetEdit configuration editor with syntax validation, autocomplete, and configuration validation as just like the standalone NetEdit platform has, that is now built into the cloud platform so that anyone could take advantage of this from anywhere in the world. So let's see how this works. I'm going to select my switch and choose Edit Config in the bottom right corner. And this is the multi-editor UI. So this is the configuration that Central has pulled from the switch after pushing the group config, and we can make direct changes to this config from the multi-editor itself. So if I realize that I forgot to add an extra VLAN for server applications that are going to be connected to this switch from a server that's co-located in the closet where the switch is going to live, then I can simply make that change directly in the editor itself. So as I start entering commands, you can see that I have this autocomplete UI that pops up here. I can use tab to complete that, just as if I was working in the CLI itself. It will also show me what the valid parameters are for a given command in line as I'm editing. So I don't have to refer to external documentation or open a console session to check command help. I get that directly within the UI here. And one thing you see here is you have the syntax highlighting, so you can see where your editable parameters are to separate them from the commands themselves. So now that I have my new VLAN, I'm actually going to add an interface for it as well. So I could either tab to autocomplete or I can click to do that. Here I can see all of the valid options for the interface command. And one thing you may notice is this is automatically resorting each command as they are entered, so that what you're seeing in this view is exactly the same as it will look in the final configuration once it is to be applied to the switch. Now, if I make a mistake while I'm typing things in, let's just say my keyboard is acting up and it double enters a keystroke here. The syntax validation kicks in and highlights the entire line to show you that there is an issue that needs to be resolved here. In this case, we have an invalid parameter because we have an IP address that is not actually a valid entry here. So let's get rid of that extra 2 there. Good, move off the line. And here we can see now we have a fully valid command with a valid IP address. Now, if I wanted to review all of the changes I've made to this configuration before I actually push it to the switch, then we can switch from editor view to diff view. and all of the changes between the current config on the switch and the candidate config that I have edited are highlighted in different colors based on what I've done. So in this case, I've added a couple sections, so the highlights are in green on the right. If I had removed any portion of the config, those would show as orange on the left. So you see new VLAN interface, that all looks good. As soon as I hit save, Central will generate this configuration, validate it against the switch itself to verify that this won't cause any issues when it gets pushed, and that we're not trying to make any changes that are not compatible with this particular switch model. And then we'll be able to see the status from the configuration status page. So we'll hit save, go to configuration status, and here we can see we are in the process of synchronizing this config. So when you click that, this brings up a diff view, just like we saw in the editor, only instead of a candidate configuration, this is now a pending config. This is what is being generated and pushed by Central to the switch at the time we open this view. So we can see the same two changes that we made before. When we close and refresh this page, this will actually bring up what we should see is that the configuration is now synchronized. This means that there are no pending changes and the config in Central matches the config on the switch with no issues. So let's back up a bit here, go back to multi-edit mode. One of the other features that the multi-editor brings to Central is the ability to use express configuration. This is a feature that allows you to quickly deploy certain features from Central to your CX switches without the need to either edit the configuration manually or access the switch locally using the console. So what is available in the current release of Central is device profile mode. So you can deploy the default Aruba AT profile directly from Central using VLAN, custom VLAN configuration, and PoE settings, along with enabling jumbo frames. And then we provide a number of network analytics engine agent scripts that you can deploy directly from the Central UI to the switch to provide local monitoring of your switch health and network operation. And we are planning to add additional functionality to this express configuration, as well as Aruba CX switch configuration in general in future releases of Central.
That is a lot of great info. It really shows that Aruba has put a lot of thought into making it easier to get customer infrastructure up and running quickly.
That's right. And we're only getting better from here. So our engineers are constantly making improvements to the switch software and our management platforms to streamline customer workflows and make it as simple as possible to get users up and running quickly. And with that, let's go ahead and turn it back over to Justin.
Thank you, Matt and Ruben, for going over the different ways of provisioning infrastructure and being able to deploy that within Aruba and Aruba Campus Network. So we provisioned the data center. We've got the campus ready, the campus switches, the access switches to plug in our cameras, security camera to. The next, we need to be able to securely onboard the camera and have an efficient way using overlays of getting the traffic from the campus edge to the data center. In our next episode, Daryl Wen will be joining me to discuss how we can securely onboard this camera and the different ways that we can apply dynamic segmentation to its traffic so that it can access the facial recognition application in the data center. So be sure to tune in to our next episode.